Hey everybody, welcome back to the Flannel Channel. I'm Philip. I'm glad you're here. Exciting video for you guys today. The boys at the shop and I were given full access at the QA1 Motorsports complex right here in our home state of Minnesota. And so we're able to show you some behind the scenes look at some of the coolest suspension systems and driveline components, how they're made right here in America. It's awesome. So if you're into race cars and welding, CNC machining, and seeing how some of the coolest hot rod components are built, this is going to be a fun video. Also, stick around for the end of it because that's where we get to go through my favorite part, the R&D shop. And honestly, I haven't been around that many famous hot rods before in my life. You're going to love it. Stick around. Let's do this. Here with the crew, and we just met up with Casey. She's our contact with QA1. She's gonna take us on a tour. We're gonna get to see some of the processes that they use to make some awesome racing components, and so I'm excited you guys can be here with us. Let's goggle up and go check out some awesome parts. That's Casey behind the desk, and we're meeting our tour guide for this trip. That's Damien, and we just discovered he's the first cousin of one of the guys in our group. We didn't even know that. Pretty funny moment.
So QA1 started in 1993 right here in Minnesota, actually in Bloomington. Shortly after, moved down here to Lakeville to our previous location, but started with rod ends and spherical bearings.
Okay.
Seeing the need and the usage of rod ends and bearings in the motorsports market, QA1 actually acquired Hal Shocks in 1998,
okay,
followed by the acquisition of Carrera in 2004. So that's how we got into the shock market for both Dragon Street, Circle Track, Street Performance. Built those parts here in Lakeville. 2011, we actually acquired Cap Auto Products and the Edelbrock tubular suspension design and moved that manufacturing here to Minnesota. And that's when we expanded into our second building over at the old location. 2015, we started selling carbon fiber drive shafts that we manufacture here in-house.
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
And then, we've continued on with the expansion of our fabricated components, drive shafts, shocks, struts, caster camber plates. We do a lot of OEM applications.
Oh, okay.
So we've got some mobility chair scooters that we'll see as we're going through the building.
Huh.
But basically with the industrial side of the business, anything linkage related, so door closers on doors, for example. We do a lot of industrial and lawn and garden equipment.
Oh. Wow.
So a lot of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think of.
Yeah.
But anywhere where there's motion control needed, we have solutions that can work with that.
That's awesome. Very cool. And how long have you worked for QA1?
About 11 and a half years.
Is that right?
So 2012 is when I started with QA1.
Very cool. Very cool. Casey, how about you? When did you start?
It'll be 5 years in December.
Awesome.
So moving down this way, we've got our accounting, marketing, customer service and sales department.
Okay.
So if you call QA1 with a tech question or to place an order, those are coming to these guys over here.
These guys here.
So they're going to be able to answer your questions,
Yeah.
help you out with part numbers.
Gotcha.
And here we do have a couple guys working from home again today.
Okay.
So it's kind of a nice option that we have where it's flexible, and then a
Yeah.
lot of people do take Friday off as well, especially this time of year before stuff starts getting
Totally.
wet and snowy.
Yep. And here's where we need to goggle up. Awesome.
So here Demir's bending up our sway bars. Okay. So all of our sway bars are manufactured here, CNC bent.
Okay.
We've got the raw material stacked up here, so it's very efficient. He gets a job in, you grab the correct piece of tubing or bar saw, cut to length, run his program in the bender, and then he's got a check fixture here for checking as well.
Wow.
Once they're bent up, we actually weld the sway bar end link tabs onto the end of them.
Okay.
So we've got a CNC machined insert, gets put in the end and then welded.
Gotcha.
So that helps us with clocking. We can make sure that they're clocked correctly every time.
Right.
We're not smashing the ends and having them off a little bit. They're built the same way in the fixture every single time.
Is it robot welded or welded by hand, or?
Typically, the sway bars are going to be hand welded.
Gotcha.
We do have other products like our control arms, some K-members, stuff like that we do robotically weld. And we'll get to that when we get to the other end of the building.
Gotcha. You'll want to catch this. This is cool. So he'll do a run of these of, you know, however many are ordered at one time, and running through the same part number over and over again with the go, no-go gauge, basically making sure everything's...
Yep, so on the test fit jig there, it's got a couple of those saddles that fit tight on the bar, and it's got a couple other ones where there's a go, no-go pin that gets checked around it on the radius.
Yep. That makes sense. That's awesome.
And then he can cut any extra drop off in the cold saw.
Sure. Makes sense. Super
There you
cool.
go. Sway bar is basically born right there.
Right on.
So all of our plate stock comes in the back door here. We've got our Trump laser here.
Okay.
So, you know, anything that comes in, material is going to get stacked up, goes directly into the laser. If it is going out for plating, if that's the final op on it, you know, we can get it over to our shipping and receiving dock. If it's something where it needs another op, it needs to be bent, it goes over here to our CNC brake press.
Wow.
So this thing's programmed. We just put in the part number on what we're doing, and it'll actually go through. The back stops will move forward and backwards, and then it will stop at the correct bend angles.
Gotcha.
So that thing's fully programmed. We just need to put in the part that we're doing at.
That's so cool.
Very cool piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, oh man. All aluminum?
Yep, this is one of our lathes. Feed in the tubing here. This is an automatic feeder. This machine runs 24/7, lights out. Wow. This cuts all of our aluminum shock bodies.
Okay.
So we've got the raw material that comes in, get loaded in, and then this machine, the feeder here, picks it up. It'll do a controlled feed on that. Wow. So it will actually adjust itself to feed the bar stock at a consistent rate. And then when it gets to the end of the tubing, it'll actually pull it out and drop it into the bucket over here rather than feeding the drop through the machine.
Oh, okay.
If we feed the drop through the machine, a lot of times that'll get stuck in the conveyor on the chip side.
Sure.
It'll wreck the conveyor, break it, plug it up, something like that. It'll shut down the machine. So we can keep this thing going more efficiently by having that pull the drop out and drop it out the other end.
Gotcha.
So,
Wow.
in order to keep this thing running, we've got a robotic arm on the end of it that will actually take the shock body out. It's going to go through a drain cycle, so it'll let there and drain the coolant out of it.
Yeah.
And when it's done from there, it's going to drop it into one of these bins.
Wow.
So as long as we've got empty bins here, this thing will keep running.
That's so cool. So that's really about the only human element that needs to be here. Once it's programmed, you said it can run round the clock, 24/7 in the dark by itself.
Yep.
If you keep empty bins here for it to keep stacking, it'll just keep cranking out. Threaded shock bodies, you said, is what this is?
Yes.
Shock bodies, wow.
So we've got the raw bar stock going in, and coming out, we've got a machine body threaded inside and out on both ends. So that's ready to go out to anodizing. It'll go out, get clear anodized, come back, and then we make it into a shock.
Fantastic. It's incredible.
So over here, we've got our shock bases.
Oh, yeah.
So single adjust shock bases. These are going in as solid bar stock, and then running through the machining center here, all of these features are getting cut in this one machine.
Wow. So every direction that it needs to happen.
Yep, the threading.
Putting the threads on, it's doing everything. Wow. That's really incredible.
So once it's done, it'll come out of the chuck, and it comes out the end, drops down onto the table, and then somebody will come by at some point, load them into the box.
Sure.
And again, those are going to go out for anodizing locally.
Wow. Wow. Wow, that's super cool.
Similar setup here. This is actually one of our Mopar lower control arm torsion bar hex keys.
Sure. Okay.
So when you install this on the car, your torsion bar goes in here.
Yeah. Yep.
This is actually keyed into the adjuster arm on the control arm.
Sure. Yep.
And then this will all get welded into that key.
Gotcha.
So, but it's locked in there before it even gets welded.
And this is steel.
Yes.
And this is it's
Yep.
ready to weld on this end, and this end will take the torsion bar.
Correct.
The
Yep. So
new
once this
Mopar.
is all welded and assembled, this goes out to powder coating.
Sure.
Comes back from powder coating. The pivot shaft and bushing actually will get pressed into this end of the key here, and that'll get boxed up and that'll be ready to bolt onto a car.
That's awesome.
But those are going in as solid
you
bar
can see
stock.
it working right through
Yep.
the window there. That's so
You can
cool.
get closer to it if you need to.
Yeah. So
We've got another robotic arm on this one. This one typically cuts steel shock bodies.
okay.
So same type of deal, just steel.
Gotcha.
So those are typically used on circle track applications. A lot of rules on circle track racing classes dictate that you have to run steel body shocks.
Oh, sure.
So you can't
Yep.
necessarily run aluminum.
Right. That makes sense. Yep. So it's essentially doing the same kind of thing that the aluminum one was
Correct.
doing, but
Yep.
it's just doing it in steel.
Yep.
Does
So
it
we'll-
take a little bit longer because it's steel, or not? Not really. The bits don't really care. They can just.
It actually does. So the steel does take a little bit longer to machine. It is a little bit harder on the material.
Sure. Okay.
So if we can make something out of aluminum, it's generally more cost effective. It's easier on the tooling. It cuts quicker, even though the aluminum can be more expensive than the steel. Just the processing is quicker on it.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
it depends on what we're doing. If it's something where we can use aluminum, a lot of times we will try to.
Sure.
And then it also helps with the weight on the vehicle.
Yeah.
You know, you're putting something on your race car, how do we make it lighter?
Yeah.
How do we make it strong enough, but how do we make it lighter?
Gotcha.
So here we've got shock assembly.
Okay.
This typically runs Monday through Friday with doing 410s. And then we've got the 2 shifts here as well. So Dragon Street shocks are done on this side, all of our adjustable shocks. Non-adjustable and circle track are typically done over here. So a little bit
Gotcha.
lower volume, a little bit different assembly method on that.
Okay.
But still the same thing. They're getting assembled. They're going to go through the dyno process. And once they complete validation, we've got this long conveyor system here in the middle. All of the shocks go on that conveyor. And it's essentially a big dishwasher or a parts
okay.
washer. So
Yeah.
it washes all of the shocks.
Yep.
And they come out the end. There's a laser on the end of it that'll sense something's there, and it stops the conveyor until somebody takes that shock off.
Sure.
So these smaller shocks here, these are some of those mobility shocks that we talked about earlier.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So
Makes
these
sense.
actually get assembled into a coilover. Casey's got the shock here. So now it'll go through the assembly machine, and it actually gets a coil spring put on it,
Okay.
and the other end of the eyelet.
Very cool.
So full assembly. These will be ready to get boxed up and shipped out as soon as they get that spring on them.
Huh.
So all of our shocks actually have the part number and serial number laser etched into the end of the closure nut here.
That's cool.
So if you have one of our shocks and you're wondering what part number it is, it's
Gotcha.
on the closure nut.
It's right there.
Anything made since about 2007, it's actually lasered right there.
Man, that's
So
awesome.
when these come over here for assembly, they're going to get bearings, they're going to get bushings, decals go on. They're going to get boxed up with instructions, stickers, and any hardware that needs to go with the shock.
Sure.
Yep.
So these
They're-
guys are making sure everything else is going.
They're coming out here,
right.
checking these, signing off on everything, making sure it has the correct components,
Gotcha.
making sure CNC components are meeting spec, meeting the prints.
Wow.
They're double checking the check fixtures that Demir is working with on the sway bars. And when we get down to welding, same type of deal there where we've got the check fixtures as well.
Man.
And
That's
then
cool.
as far as final boxing on components before they get packed up and put on the shelf, you know, do we have the install instructions? Do we have the correct hardware? Are the stickers on the components? Do they look good?
Sure.
Is that something that we want to open the box and have Christmas morning?
Right. Yeah.
If it
Yep.
doesn't meet the Christmas Day standard, we got to keep working on it.
Cool.
So these are GM uppers, these are GM lowers.
Sure.
A couple of unique features on our lower control arms for the GM cars. We've got a forged ball joint housing integrated into the weldment. So this actually uses our rebuildable and adjustable ball joints.
That's
so all of the ball joint components will get loaded in there. There's a torque nut and a lock nut that go in there.
Sure.
The control arm itself is fully robotic welded.
Okay.
And then we've got the stamped pocket here for the coilover mount.
Sure. Yep.
So unique feature, adds a lot of strength to it, adds a nice design, and it saves a lot of weight. The
I would
ball
think
joint
so.
housings themselves help save weight, and it helps cut down on the bulk around the ball joint. With the rebuildable ball joints, you don't have to worry about pressing a new ball joint in or out. You just pull it apart, change the guts if needed, or adjust it as it gets loose. So
That's
as it
awesome.
wears, but from a longevity standpoint, that typically isn't an issue.
That's super cool.
Adjust them, and you're ready to go.
And polyurethane bushings in the ends.
It depends on the application.
Okay.
So we do offer our street arms with polyurethane bushings. We do use a composite race bushing. It's actually a high load, high wear material. So it works very well, good lubricity, and very low deflection. So we use those in our pro touring and our drag race arms.
Awesome. And grease zerks, is that
Yes.
what that would be for? Okay. Yep.
So all of our components are greasable. So help make sure that they're going to last for the life of the car.
Sure. Makes sense. And I would think with a design like that, that you can get your wheel fitment a little bit better that way too. You're not.
Sure.
You're not
So this is actually an adjustable steering stop that we
Okay.
put on the arms. So if you are running a wider wheel and tire and you don't want to have your tire rubbing on the inside of the frame or on the sway bar, you can adjust that in and out.
Sure.
You know, but generally you're going to be looking at approximately the same steering angle as the factory control arm.
Sure.
But you do have the option with the steering stop to adjust that some.
You're
prevent
not gonna
that
have to get out the
clearance.
grinder and start
No,
sawing away at your
No.
control arms. That's awesome.
no, we really try to prevent that.
Yeah.
Once you've got something that's nice and powder coated, you don't want to be
We'll
grabbing
keep it
the
nice.
grinder.
Yep.
So they come back from powder coating on these racks, go through assembly here. This cell, we've got all the bushings, the ball joint components, everything gets boxed up on these inserts, wrapped,
Cool.
and then put into the boxes themselves.
And you guys keep everything really clean and neat. I love that too.
Yes.
That's huge.
Yeah, this is normal procedure. We didn't clean anything up just for you.
We left our shop a mess when we left home. So
Here we've got our truck arms for the 72 and earlier C10s.
oh yeah.
So
Okay.
those are waiting for assembly. So
Ooh,
we'll get
those
some,
are cool.
we'll get some bushings and components put in those, get those boxed up next week.
You guys have some really accurate forklift drivers too, I would think.
They're generally pretty good.
Okay.
So a lot of their components, we work with a company locally that will bend the tubing and then laser cut the ends. So when it comes in the door, it's ready to go into fixtures and start getting welded.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
We do have the tube bender as we saw with the sway bars, but from a volume standpoint, we just don't have the volume to do it.
You can still outsource some things to get production even faster that way.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So here's that stamping on the lower coilover mount that we looked at in the finished arm. So this would be a raw arm. This one's for a 88 to 98 C1500. Or, sorry, no, this one's for a 65 to 70 B body.
You were
Cool.
close.
Hey,
The,
I'm impressed
It's funny that
anyway.
the threaded end.
You could be completely wrong, and I don't care. I believe you.
I should have went with it. Should have went with it.
Some guy's gonna watch the video and go, mine doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
The robotic welder presents a new challenge, so you have to be able to get all the way around the tubing to weld it.
Sure.
And that's why these are pocketed like that. Whereas if you're doing something hand welding, a lot of times you might have two fixtures or you might be able to flip the part over.
Just flip it.
With this, it has to go into the fixture. Everything gets done all at once.
Yeah. Man. And that takes a lot of time to tell the robot what to do and where to start and where to stop.
Yep.
That's
So
a
engineering
lot.
also does the programming on the robot and make sure that the welds are actually on the weld joints, not off on the tubing or something like that. But once it's programmed, works really well. You know, the great thing about having a robotic welder is every component comes out exactly the same. So consistency is great on that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then over here we do have a lot of our manual welding stations. So we got the two robotic welders. I think we've got probably 8 manual welding stations.
Wow. Very cool. Because there's some things that just
low-
require the human to do it.
Lower volume components,
Sure.
or sometimes a simpler component, it's just better to do by hand.
Sure.
So this would be one of our trailing arms. This would be for one of our big wheel applications.
Sure.
So adjustable trailing arm for a B body or a G body, something like that.
Gotcha. Very
Thank you,
cool.
Casey.
Beautiful. And this is spotless too. I mean, for being a welding shop, this is
yes.
really clean.
Yeah, for a welding shop, it's definitely clean over here.
Yeah, it's impressive.
We offer custom length drive shafts from 13 to 65 inches long. We are limited by the length that our drive shaft balancer can actually balance. So every one of the drive shafts that we manufacture is torsion tested and balanced before it leaves here. So, yes, we could build a drive shaft for your car. We can't shorten your existing drive shaft. Over here, we've got a 4-head winder. We can actually wind 4 lengths of tubing at a time, and they get wound on these mandrels here.
Wow.
So we use that for a lot of our direct fit drive shafts for modern Mustangs, Challengers, Camaros.
Man.
And then we've got our single head winder over here. We can walk around the racking and see that one a little bit better.
Yeah, that's serious stuff.
It's really satisfying.
I bet. Yeah. Man, oh man.
So again, we've got the rack and mandrels. So we wind the drive shaft tubing in-house. We have full control over wall thickness, wrap angles, and we actually vary the wrap angles between layers.
Oh, sure,
So
for strength.
For strength, or sometimes just for torsional.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we can actually change the spring rate of the drive shaft depending on what those wrap angles look like.
Wow. So
make-
there's certain times that you're going to want more or less depending on what the application is.
So with a circle track car, for example, you've got a dirt car, you're running on a slick track, but you've got a couple spots where it's really tacky. You want that drive shaft to actually wrap up a little bit and absorb that transition so it doesn't upset the car. So with our traction twist drive shafts, they're actually designed to wrap up and absorb that shock to the drive line. One of the features of a carbon fiber drive shaft is actually the safety factor of it.
Sure.
So on your circle track car, you break a U-joint, or a dirt car, they've got a lot of articulation in the suspension, and a lot of times the slip yokes will pull out, or the pinion angle will get wrapped up, and it'll actually cause the U-joint to break, and the drive shaft comes out of the car. With a carbon shaft, as soon as it hits the roll cage tubing, it hits the track, it's going to disintegrate, it's going to come apart, and you don't have to worry about the collateral damage where it's going to come through into the cockpit, into the driver, or tear the car up nearly as much.
Gotcha. Yep. That
So
totally makes sense.
safety is a huge feature with a carbon fiber drive shaft. From a weight standpoint, they're going to be approximately half the weight of a steel drive shaft, and generally a pound or 2 lighter than aluminum, but significantly stronger and safer than both. The blue tinted resin, that's what we use in our custom drive shafts and our circle track drive shafts. That's a nano-silica particle resin that we developed with 3M, probably getting close to 10 years ago now.
Cool.
But that actually has great abrasion resistance. And the nano-silica particles, essentially, they're going to act like drilling a hole at the end of a fiberglass crack.
Sure.
So when a rock does come up and hit it, you're going to get the crack, and it's going to hit those silica particles, and it's going to stop it.
Just stop it. Yeah.
And when it twists past it, it's going to hit another one, and it's going to stop it.
Wow.
So
Fascinating.
But the silica particles are what gives it that tint. So we do have an 11-step process on prepping the drive shaft and the tube yokes before everything gets assembled.
Wow.
So
Cool.
it's proprietary. I don't know what all of the steps are, so I can't help you on that.
Got to be some magic happening in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here we've got our torsion bar suspension. We looked at that torsion bar key coming off the CNC. So torsion bar suspension on this side, and we've got the rack and pinion coilover conversion option on the other side of the car.
Gotcha. You can kind of compare then which one's right for you.
So give you a compare and contrast, and you know, there's a lot of Mopar customers that, you know, it's a Mopar, it's got torsion bars, and that's one of the unique features on those cars, and they want to keep them.
Sure.
But they do want the car to handle and drive a little bit better. So we do offer some great bolt-on upgrades, and then you got your customers that they're looking to get rid of the torsion bars, update the steering, update the suspension, and just go to a completely new system, but still bolts in.
Different engine mount options?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
This is going to accept the factory biscuit style mounts. So your you know, typical 60s muscle car is going to use this style engine mount here on the factory K member, and it drops right back onto ours. With the coilover conversion, we do have QA1 specific engine mounts, but that's going to eliminate any adapters or added components that go in there. Our mounts are going to bolt directly onto the engine block.
Sure.
We offer those for big block, small block, Gen 3 Hemi,
I was gonna say,
Gen
if you
2
get a
Hemi.
Hemi
So,
swap. Yeah.
so if you got your 426 Hemi, we've got the mounts for that.
Sure.
The RB series engines, the LA series, and then also the modern Gen 3 stuff. So, and we've actually got a couple different configurations on this one. So down here, this is going to be your factory leaf spring mounting location. So bolts in with the new mount right where the leaf spring mount would be on the Mopars. And then on the top here, we've got the inboard leaf spring location. So for the guys that have gone to the narrower spring mounts, our system will bolt in with both configurations. So axle brackets just get reorientated for the shock mounts, and weld a couple brackets on the axle housing, bolt the rest of it in.
That's really slick. And I'm sure those cars handle like a completely different machine once you do something like this. Just night and day difference. It's got to be.
Getting rid of the leaf springs, getting rid of the factory steering. With our front suspension, it does use a Mustang 2-base spindle, so you're getting brake upgrades. So especially on a drum brake car, that's going to be a huge change there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lucky one that gets to work in this car.
I play out here a lot.
Thank you. You know all about all that, yeah. I was hoping we'd be able to see some of these today, so this is cool. This is cool. And actually, Jacob has a G-body at home, and I used to drive a Regal in high school, so like, yeah, this is so cool.
Perfect. We have got a 1,000 horsepower Gen 3 Hemi powered Regal that's for sale.
Perfect. Hemi powered even. Wow.
It was
So-
a partnership with Carcraft last summer.
I remember reading about it.
Yeah, so they came up here, they did the suspension install, and then they went down to, what's the shop in Milwaukee?
Cool Hand Customs did the engine install and the cage install.
And then they took it on drag.
Car went on drag week,
Yep.
so it's
And
quite the machine.
it's fun to see it in person. I've only seen videos and articles on it, so.
Yeah, it's 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, the new kit, the kit you guys are going to be installing is
What year is it? 80?
86.
86, okay. Yep. Mine was in 85 in high school.
What you're saying is I should get QA1 suspension for mine.
Well, probably. Yeah,
This
that'd be
car
smart.
has a full level 3 drag kit on it. So tubular control arms, trailing arms, mod shocks. It's got a Gen 3 Hemi 6.2 short block with 6.4 heads, Edelbrock supercharger, TCI 4L80, QA1 carbon fiber drive shaft, quick performance 9-inch, Willwood disc brakes all the way around.
Oof. Yeah.
It's
You
ready
said
to go down the road.
It looks like it.
Or the drag strip.
Is it a 9-inch
Yeah.
rear end? Okay.
Yep. So quick performance 9-inch, true track, 370 gear.
That looks like a good time. Like,
So
I
this is
love
our
this truck.
72 D100. We call it New Blue. This one has a 351 based 410 stroker. Wow. Still carbureted.
Awesome.
C6 transmission. So it's just shy of 500 horse and a lot of fun.
I bet.
So
Man
this
alive.
this truck's been all over the country. Did a couple power tours. It's done the Motor State Challenge in Western Michigan. Driven from here to Michigan, raced and back. Hurt some feelings of some Corvettes.
Right on. Oh man, that's cool.
This is our 69 D100. We acquired this one 3 years ago. So truck's named Corkscrew, came out of California. It was originally used on a vineyard. So, when we got it, it was all original, solid axle, leaf springs, front and back. This truck actually did have the optional power steering, but 318, 2-barrel, 727, so nothing all that much fun or exciting. The factory steering is actually an add-on for the power steering. So you get a manual box with a power ram on it, and it's about 6 turns lock to lock. So
Oh man.
we've updated this with our independent front suspension system. So we've got a bolt-in front suspension for these trucks. And this one needed a little bit more power, so we put in a 5.7 Hemi and 8 HP 70, so 8-speed automatic out of a 2020 Charger. It does have a small comp stage 1, no springs required cam in it, and dynoed at 354 horse at the rear wheels and 371 pound-feet. So not huge numbers, but man, this thing's a blast to drive.
Oh, I bet.
It's smooth.
And everybody else has like a C10, you know, or something like this,
Yeah.
but you can be somebody different.
I think we saw like 6 or 7 of them on Power Tour this year. It
Yeah.
was like
It was shocking how many
Wow.
swept line trucks were on Power Tour
Yeah.
this year.
the very first day of Power Tour, we had a kid. We were like at a meetup with a bunch of friends, and there was another one. He's like, "I built mine to match yours." I'm like, "Love
That's
that."
so cool.
We used yours as a blueprint.
I love it.
Philip, I'm sure you noticed all the pinstriping.
Oh, yeah. First thing I'm looking at is the pinstriping on it. So yeah, that's so rad.
Or is that just stickers from?
Dakota Digital.
No, that's a Dakota Digital dash, and when I ordered the dash, they were out of stock on it, so they had to build it to the order. And as long as they were building it to order, hey, do you want any logos or anything on it? Yeah. So Dakota Digital was nice enough to get our QA1 logo in there, and then the hashtag Go Drive It. So
That's so rad.
it's been a lot of fun building this thing. So we had a couple so this truck was built by employees generally after hours.
Awesome.
So one of our production guys that helped out with us, you know, gets done with his 10-hour shift, comes and hangs out with us for 3 or 4 hours afterwards.
Cool.
But Josh actually had a cork for a mason jar. So to fit the name of the truck, he brought in a cork to fill the original gas cap filler hole in the cab. And we've got a rear-mounted tank with an in-tank pump from Tank Sink underneath the bed there.
Yeah, back in here.
And that's the original fill cap.
Yep. That's
We
the
actually
old full cap.
modified a 69 Camaro fill neck to fit inside the bed walls,
Cool.
and then put the factory D100 cap on it.
Man, great job.
Same wheel? Just
The
some stickers? I mean, the same.
yeah, rocket wheels on both of these. The F100 has 18s, and I forget the exact tire size on the back, but we originally had an AOD in there. We had problems with a couple AODs, and we gave up on it. We went back to a C6, so we didn't have to worry about burning them up anymore. But we didn't want to change the gears, so we went to a little bit bigger tire in the back. So we've got 315s on the back of that, a little bit taller now. The D100 has 295 square on 20-inch wheels. So the D100 has a little bit bigger wheel opening than the Ford, so the 20s just fit a little bit better.
That's cool. You don't see many Dodge pickups around.
Yeah.
Not
say
too
there's-
many.
There's so many cool lines about it and things that are going on in here that you don't see in other trucks.
So
That's super
Man,
cool.
it was ugly though before. Like, you got it, I'm like, ew. I like it now.
stock height, 15-inch dog dish caps. I mean, just fender gaps
Yeah, you look
that.
at the fender, like the front
Jeez.
fenders, and they are ugly. I mean, until you do all of this.
So you do it, yeah.
It's like that. It's the ugly duckling. We love it though.
You see the guy running around yesterday with like a '62 Chevy. I would have never picked up on it until your project, but
Okay.
it was a long box that he made into a short box.
Oh,
you could
cool.
see the weld. I mean, I don't think they ever
Sure.
made a short box in that series of truck. But
Yeah.
you could see the welds, you know, where they cut it. and
Yeah.
Primer.
Yep. Yep. Sometimes. Yeah, I think that's how our conversation started. Is I asked you about Crown Victoria stuff because my
think so,
pickup
yeah.
is sitting on Crown Victoria underneath.
Yeah.
So if you guys
Okay.
get into Crown Vic stuff, that's
We
That's
do
my
have a
next
bolt-in
thing.
front coilover kit for a Crown Vic.
yeah. Yep.
So that actually stemmed from our F100 project.
Yeah.
So we
cool.
came out with a brand new clean sheet design independent front suspension for the F100s. And a lot of customers looked at it and went, man, that's really cool. But I already Crown Vic swapped my truck, so do you have anything for me?
Yeah. Yep.
So
Makes sense.
we actually came out with a Crown Vic coilover conversion shortly after the F100 independent front suspension.
Very cool.
So, and the main focus was the F100 crowd.
The truck guys that
Yep,
are
the
doing
swap guys.
Yep. Yep. Makes sense. Love it. Man. Well, this is an awesome tour. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to ask or find out?
Brandon?
What a finale.
How much of the import stuff do you guys get? Or cover, I should say.
That is not a market that we get into. So our primary markets are going to be domestic muscle cars, classic truck, do some modern performance stuff, but the classic domestic cars and classic trucks is a big thing.
Yeah, like BMWs or Audis.
No, nothing as far as European or Japanese imports.
Is that a market you're thinking about getting into, or just leaving that?
Nothing in the works at this time.
And the Silverado on the end, that's the 07 and up? Is that kind of a new thing that you guys are starting to work on now?
Yeah, that's got our all-new suspension for
Yeah.
the modern trucks. So we've got
Cool.
the 7 to 18 Silverado lowering kits, and those fit both 2 and 4-wheel drive. And then we've got the 15 to 20 F-150 2 and 4-wheel drive lowering kits as well.
Cool. Very cool.
So coilover front shocks, shackle, hanger, flip kit stuff for the back, and then drop spindles as well. So the Silverado was actually bought new in 2012 as just a shop truck.
Sure.
And that lasted a surprisingly long time. It was actually late last year. We said, well, we got the Silverado here, so we're going to lower it.
Awesome.
We're going to use it for R&D. So
Yeah,
had the stock 17-inch wheels on it. One of our tech guys took it upon himself to get the bigger wheels on there and the tires. Upgraded the logo on the back.
Yeah, that's a cool feature that, like, it's easy to miss, but once you spot it, you're like, oh, of
Sure.
course, this is super cool. With my truck sitting on a Crown Victoria chassis, my control arms in the rear, so upper and lower control arms, there's like the bushings are shot. So if I wanted to make my own out of rod ends and a threaded rod in the center to just kind of build my own control arm, would I come and talk to you guys about something like that?
Yeah, so QA1 offers rod ends, spherical bearings. We've got high misalignment spacers to fit inside the rod end so you get your articulation.
Yeah.
We've got tube adapters, so get your tubing, put the threaded tube adapter in there, threaded bung, weld that in.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to do a complete trailing arm with rod ends on both sides, you know, we've got those
left hand,
components
right
all
hand
cataloged.
thread, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Left and right hand thread,
Cool.
steel, aluminum.
Nice.
We've got the jam nuts available.
Perfect.
So yeah, we can get
Awesome.
you pretty close at least.
Right on.
Width might not match up exactly, but you know, if you got to put a washer in there,
Yeah.
no big
That's
deal.
fine.
Right?
Yeah, I gotta cut off wheel and a
Or if
torch
you're
and-
making your own, or if you're making your own custom mounts, you know, doing a custom 4-link, something like that,
Yeah.
where you're not using the OEM mounts on the application.
Cool.
We also offer universal weld-in rear coilover kits.
Okay.
So we got your shocks, your springs, your mounting brackets,
Yep.
tabs, stuff like that.
Perfect.
And we offer those with various different spring rates.
Okay.
So yeah, for the do-it-yourself guy, we've got a lot of components as well.
Perfect.
We want to make sure that we're actually solving a problem with our products. So we try not to do the Me Too product where, you know, it actually has to do something. Our control arms, for example, on the G-body, we're adding caster, we're improving the alignment specifications, so it works with modern performance tires. You know, in the case of 60s cars, those things were designed with bi-sply tires in mind. Radials need a completely different alignment setting. So what problems are we solving for customers? You know, with coilovers, we want to make sure that we're getting the right height range where it needs to be so you can get the car set at the right stance.
Well, man, this was an amazing tour.
All
Had a
right,
blast.
well, thanks for coming
Dude,
in.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. While we were there, we picked up the suspension parts that we need for our upcoming Silverado project. If you guys are in the market for any suspension or driveline components, we highly recommend QA1. It's an amazing place, really, really cool people, made right here in America, and we're so excited to be partnering with them in the future. Thank you to QA1 for the tour, and thank you guys for watching the video. We're excited about what's coming up next. Stay tuned.